Did you ever think about going to Europe afterwards? I mean, if you had a European passport, for example, do you think you would have tried to have worked in Europe afterwards, after studying?
Worked. Yeah, I mean, I I interned out there. I really fell in love with Italy. It's an amazing country and lots of lots of culture and good food. But I mean, I had an offer to work at Alpha, but the visa stuff didn't work out. It was like really complicated. And also, I was a student. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know, like, I didn't know anything about anything. And then, of course, the HR gives you like the time limit, to respond. And I'm like, so when I interviewed with Alfa Romeo the first time, so I know I work for them now, but after school, I interviewed with them, but it was like midterm of my graduation term. So I was like really sleep deprived. And I didn't have, like I said, I rented a really shitty apartment. So like I couldn't interview there. I interviewed, the school let me borrow like one of their conference rooms to do an interview. And I had really prepared. I mean, if anything, if anybody knows me, they'll tell you I'm like a prepared person. So like I did like mock interviews with one of my instructors, and I like had like post-it notes attached to the back of my laptop monitor with all the answers, to questions that they might ask, and I had my portfolio laid out. I was like all ready and everything, and then I get on the call with Giovanni Roboda and Marco Tancone, and they're both there, and I'm just, all right, this is my first job interview, and they're like, oh, okay, Laura, so we saw your work, we want to offer you the job, oh, sorry, HR says we have to ask you some questions. How do you like school? And I was like,
What?
what? Like, what's going on? I expected like a interview, right? And that's how they do it over there. And so that night I went home and I had to go get something printed for my grad show. So I went to like FedEx, Kinko's to like get something printed. And then I slept in my car because I hadn't slept in forever while I was waiting for the print. And then I woke up and I remember thinking, did I dream that? Like, was that really real or did I dream that? Because I was so sleep
Oh
deprived. I couldn't,
shit.
I was like trying to remember in my head, like what had happened. I was like, I think that they said, and then the HR lady called and everything. But yeah, I would have loved to go there. But essentially my inexperience as a student and lack of understanding on how to navigate the visa programs and stuff, I just couldn't go. But I was really happy to work. I mean, the coolest internship I had by far was the one at
Tony. Oh,
Chrysler slash FCA slash Stellantis, depending what time of what year you're talking about. But that was by far the coolest internship I had. I got to work on like actual studio projects, and Ralph. We talked about Ralph before. Was like a big reason why I decided to go with that company. Like he was this super approachable, even as an intern. Like super approachable guy, and talked to me directly about my
but
designs.
we
And I was just
sorry, are
kind
we
of,
talking about Detroit now or in
yeah.
okay.
So then I decided to go to Detroit. Because I liked the team there essentially.
So you interned at Bertoni, but you also interned at Alpha, is that correct?
No,
Ah,
no, no.
okay.
Alpha was like after
I'm with
graduation
you.
for a
Okay,
job.
I'm with you. Okay.
Um, but I interned at Bertone and then Volvo in Camarillo in
Yes.
California, and then FCA, Stellantis, Chrysler.
So who was in charge of the studio Volvo when you were there? Was it Trisha?
She was in charge of it, but she had left for Sweden, so she interviewed
Okay.
me. And then by the time I started the internship, she had been shipped off to Sweden. So it was John was there, and John was the head.
John
Kinsey.
John who?
Kinsey, I think is his last name.
I don't know. I don't think. Oh no!
It's now Eric.
Sorry, John who?
Kinsey.
I don't know.
I might. It's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure that's his last name. But now it's Eric. Eric was my like mentor when I was an intern there, and he's the head
Eric who?
Of Eric Beek.
Eric Beek. Don't know him either.
He's I think he's an art center grad too. He was really nice, and he was like my mentor when I was interning, and now he's the head of the studio.
So what year is this now? Is this like 2013, 2014, or no?
No. Well,
20.
Yeah, I guess it'd be, I interned in Bertone in 2012, and then I think 2013 would have been
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because I was in Gothenburg, I think it was in 2013, and Tisha was there at that time. So that would make sense. Cool. And okay, so after Volvo, then you went and interned at FCA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was awesome. I was in the Chrysler studio, and I mean they had like huge resources and you know, I didn't intern at the best time. So when I got on the plane in California, it was 90 degrees. I interned in the winter. And when I got off the plane, I know you guys work in Celsius, and I have no idea what the Celsius degrees are, but when I got off the plane, it was -40 with wind chill, which is like, I didn't even know it got that cold in the United States. Like, that's like just crazy, crazy cold. And I remember when I was like, you know, setting up the internship with their like intern coordinator, HR person, I was like, do I need to bring my car out there? And they're like, no, the hotel is across the street from the building. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then, you know, I land for my internship, and by across the street, it was really like a half mile down the street. And
in a snow blizzard.
It was like and I'm in like winter clothes from California.
Right, so
like,
raincoat.
Like we don't have winter clothes in California. Yeah. And so the first day, like I get out of my hotel room and I look at my phone and I'm like, fuck, it's like, and it was the night before I started work, it was like a record snowfall, 12 inches of snow. Like it was just insane. And so I like walk out in my like black coat, ready to walk to work. And I look at my phone. I'm like, well, that's a bit further than I thought it would be. So I walk to work through the snow, and like, I didn't know what snow drifts were.
What is it?
California. So essentially, all right. So I saw a field of snow, and I was like, I will cross that field. It's a shortcut. I will walk through. So I'm like walking through. And then I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper in the snow. And like before I know it, the snow is like up to here on me. And I'm like walking through like, you know, point of no return. And eventually I make it through to the other side. But then later when the snow melted, it was a hill like this. But the snow and the wind like fill it up and make it visually look like it's a flat surface. So yeah, by the time I got to work, I couldn't feel the front of my legs. My face was like I didn't know your eyeballs could feel cold. And it was just like, I did not. And then I got back to my hotel room after work, and I was on the first story. And I go in there and I'm like, they told me to leave the heater on, which in California you don't do because fires and energy and stuff like that. But I was like, all right, I'll leave the heater on. I go to the room and it's ice cold. And I don't know why. And I look at my bed. And there's a thin layer of ice.
No fucking ways.
Across my bed. And what had happened is the record snowfall, and it snowed so much. They had one of those heaters that like sucks the air from the outside and pulls it in. And it was just spitting snow all day. inside my room, and then the room wasn't heating, so it was freezing in my room. So I had a layer of ice on my mattress in the hotel room. So I go to the front desk and I'm like, my room is frozen. And they're like, well, just turn on the heater. I'm like, no, like, I don't even know how to explain this, but my room is like literally frozen. So I didn't love Michigan at first,
No.
but you know.
Tell me about the first time you met Ralph.
The first time I remember meeting him was a review on a clay. And I mean, he reviewed my stuff, and we all had like clay models going. I actually wasn't even, so I didn't really know. I knew who he was and I knew of his level, but I didn't really know, like, so backtrack a bit. At Volvo, they had me work on one of those like student projects where, you know, create a white space car or whatnot, develop it through the process with the guidance of the leadership in the studio. And I assumed that was what I would be doing at Chrysler. And nobody really specifically told me that that wasn't it. They just told me what to work on. And I assumed it was, you know, like a made up project. And so I'm sketching, and then they're like, okay, Ralph picked this one. I'm like, okay, cool. And I continue sketching it, developing the one that he picked. And then they had me go to clay. And it wasn't until I went into clay that I realized I had been competing on an actual project with other designers.
Oh, shit.
And I was just like, you know, well, this is a student project. And then even in clay, I was like, well, they only gave me clay because I'm the intern and, you know, they're trying to develop me. And I didn't know that my clay was like literally competing with the other clays in the studio. I was just kind of, you know, like I'm just kind of like, I guess, clueless, because they like, also my design manager when I was an intern, Irina Zavatsky, was like super mellow when she came and told me that like Ralph had picked one of my sketches for clay. She didn't make a big deal about it. She wasn't like, hey, he picked your design. She was like, okay, so Ralph picked this one. Please start developing it. Like, okay. You know, and just totally nonchalant. And I think that added to me not knowing what was going on. So my first time, I think the only reason I really met Ralph in a review is because normally I don't think you meet him until you present all your work at the end of the internship. But I knew him from the clay review because we were all reviewing clay as part of like normal studio stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, wow. And he's as nice as what he appears on Abstract.
Oh yeah. I honestly, like, a big part of why I wanted to sign on with them was because of Ralph. Like, he was super approachable and really he gave great like design feedback and reviews, and he just kind of made you want to work there.
I still do. For him, it's like
Ralph's gonna think I'm buttering him up, but I'm not, I promise.
I still don't understand how somebody so, like, at least on the surface, is like so cool and calm and I mean, he's obvious. I don't know, so soft spoken, has achieved what he's achieved, and in record time as well. And the only thing that I could come up with is that there's got to be like another side to him. But I mean, everybody I've spoken to has said what a great guy he is. You know, he clearly is. I mean, yeah, he's really, really nice guy.
I think, I mean, I'm just speculating, but I think, 2008 was rough on Detroit. And I wasn't obviously with the company at that time, but I think, that probably creates a sense of like, not just humility, but like there's a big sense of loyalty at the company. Yeah. He brings everybody along with him. And I think it was like the people that stuck around, the people that didn't take the buyout. Because he's always treated, it isn't just that he's like nice and everything. He makes a point of like bringing everybody along. He includes everybody. like I said, he invites people to his house. He he always talks at the company about how it's family. The studio is a family, and I think he really believes that.
I mean, that's the impression I get for sure. I get you get the impression when you speak to somebody like that that he's a fucking great leader, and it's not just the fact that he speaks to people with respect, but it's what he's done. In a leadership context. I'm not talking about the products he's designed or even the people that he's managed, but like when you look at things like the 2008 recession, where there was this I don't know what you call it. Would you say a severance package, where there was this really attractive package to go, and most of the I mean allegedly most of the company took, there was like a 3% staff retention or something like that. And I think he held on to like 80 or 80 something percent of his team, which, it speaks volumes. And I think when you speak to him and you also, you read up about his past and stuff, I mean, he's loyal himself, and he always has been. I think that's the thing. Some people will go, well, it's easy for you to say you're the boss, but he's always had this like emotional attachment to Chrysler for whatever reason, and I think he literally take a bullet for the company, and that's and it seems like many of his team feel the same way, not only about the company but about him as well.
Yeah.
Very, very special guy for sure. I mean, in terms of corporate leadership, I mean, there's not many people like that for sure. Laura,
Yeah.
tell me about your workflow process. You clearly know your way around a pencil. How do you like to work?
My favorite stage of the process that I could probably stay in forever is just pencil sketching. I'm not a fan of ideation on the computer. I like having, physical paper and pencil. I try and like break away my thinking a bit. So, instead of, we all get in routines, and when I get in too much of a routine, I try and think of other ways of being inspired for the form. Like I did a thing with like a wire sculpture that I dipped in soapy water because the reflections on the soapy water kind of made cool shapes. And then you can like photograph it and sketch it, using just different stuff. And then I've actually gotten really into the sub-D and alias. Alexi got me into that. And I started using Blender. I was learning Blender, but it's another interface to learn. How you start to like Control Z when you sketch? It's like I have alias, and then I have VRED, and then I have Photoshop, and I start hitting the wrong keystrokes, and I was like, really, can't we at least figure out one way to rotate a model in the program? Can't we at least agree on that? Like, where you jump from one program and then you do some weird command because you're not thinking in the same way that program is. So I was learning Blender. I was getting some stuff done in it, but I didn't like having to switch my mindset. And we've been learning Gravity Sketch at work. That's a lot of fun. I do get a little bit sick after a couple hours. I'm like super weak when it comes to motion sickness. I have no future as like a seaman. I couldn't do any of that. But sub-D is super fast. I can mock. So I kind of, previously I would, do sketches to renderings and clay and so on. But I like kind of sketches right into sub-D. It's so fast to just block in a model really quick. I can block out, I think I did like 3 versions of a design in 2 days.
Really?
It's so fast.
Jesus,
and the nice thing is you can kind of, combine. It's not learning a new interface because it's still Alias, and it combines Sub D with all the other Alias stuff. So you can kind of apply project.
Well, project and trim, exactly.
Stuff.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah.
All those tools are the same. Yeah.
You know what? I'm tired of talking about this because I keep on fucking saying it, but I've literally used Alias every day for the last fucking, I don't know, at least since the last year for sure. And I keep saying I need to spend time with the Sub D thing, and everybody said how great it is and how easy it is and whatnot. But I'm also just I'm such a fucking technophobe, and it takes so much mental energy to learn anything new. But I need to do it.
It's honestly, I picked it up in a day. It's that
Really?
easy to learn. It's if you know Alias, you can pick it up.
There's
Especially if you've messed around with Blender at all, because it's the same thought process.
Yeah, I need to just do it. I need to set some time aside and do it. I also need to spend time with Gravity Sketch as well, but I don't have time. I need time.
Gravity Sketch is fun and it's fast. I can't stay in it for very long. I
know what you mean. And I also, I like the idea of collaborating with somebody else as well, on the other side of the planet. But just me personally, from a personal standpoint, I'm terrible with stuff like that. I can't create with somebody else per se. I can, but it doesn't necessarily bring out the best result. I kind of need to be on my own to work stuff out and then to bring an idea forward. And then I'm happy to have input or, you can have a go or whatever the case is. But I'm just sitting there with somebody else. For me, it doesn't necessarily bring out the best results. And also waving a stick in the air doesn't necessarily, again, there's a question of control there, but it's a lot of fun for sure. I need to spend more time in it. So
yeah, the same way. I can't have somebody. It's rough when somebody wants to you got your mojo going, you got your creativity going for as you create your design, and then somebody comes in and is like, ooh, what if? It's can you wait until I'm done with my thought? I just want to finish my thought and then I can. Yeah, so I get that. Having co-creation, I like in the beginning, brainstorming at the beginning of a project can be really fun.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Definitely. That's great. I also, there's a lot to be said for the power of collaboration and having richer ideas from everybody's perspective as well. But there's also that works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. And for me personally,
right.
It's I don't know. But I can be socially awkward at times as well. So there's also that.
Dude, I'm the queen of socially awkward. So I guarantee you don't come.
Well, yeah, it's. I don't know. It's weird. There are times where I can be super extroverted and I feel naturally I want to talk to the fucking planet. And then there's other times where I can't even, I don't know. I don't want to be around people at all. I kind of flip-flop between those things a lot. So, in terms of designing with somebody else, it's not for me. They talk there's songwriters as well who talk about the same thing. They're artists that collaborate really well with other artists, and then there's other guys I don't know, Noel Gallagher, for example. He's tried a bunch of times to write with heroes of his or good friends of his, and he says it never ever brings out any fruit. So he's not into it, and I'm not really into it either.
Oh, see, when you say co-collaboration, that I can totally do that. It's when somebody wants to come in and critique your design before it's done.
Oh, I've got no
It's like
fucking time for
critiquing the
that shit
cake.
either. I've got no time. I want to, there's nothing more than I hate than that. Because there's always some fucking smart ass in the studio that wants to come by and go like, well, I think you need a bit more tension in this line. And it's like, yes, dickhead, but I'm getting a proportion together. And who fucking asked you?
Yep. Yeah, where you're like, obviously, yes, obviously.
Yeah, thank you, Bert,
Yeah.
for nothing.
But I like I like having somebody to bounce ideas off of. Sometimes I just need to like get a second set of eyes to kind of as like a sounding board almost. It isn't even like I'm looking for an idea. It's sort of talking about it helps me figure out what I want to do.
Totally, and I'm with you on that as well. And I also like that. I also need that. I think everybody needs that to some degree. But it's like there's nothing more irritating when you are in the process of doing something, and some clever dick comes along and he wants to offer your advice. It's but yeah, absolutely. I think. If you've developed something or you've got a bunch of ideas and it's difficult sometimes. It's not even about being objective, but you can sometimes get so zoomed in that you don't see the same thing and so yeah, sounding boards and getting bouncing ideas or feedback of other people is of course it's valuable. It just depends when and who as well. There's nothing more irritating than people that you don't really respect coming in and giving that as well. I don't know. I'm not very good with that. I've been known to be pretty rude to people in the past because of that.
I've also got to have like multiple things going on. Like I'm a bit impatient sometimes. So, when my alias model is going awry, I just don't do well at the power through method. I'm like, okay, put it down. I'll go work on something else. I like having like one or two big things to work on. And then like, I love wheels because wheels are like the stress reliever between everything else you do. When you have to design like a wheel for the car, you're like, well, that's easy. I can turn my brain off a little bit and sketch some wheels and model some wheels, and that's easy. It's like the zen time between all of the big giant projects that we work
Do you
on.
guys have like dedicated wheel designers, or is it okay?
No.
Because some studios like at Volvo, for example, I don't know what it was like in Camarillo, but in Gothenburg, there's a fucking wheel designer. And
Really?
no shit.
Yeah.
And but then like at Jaguar when I was there, I know it's a different company now, but it was kind of like every designer was kind of asked like, can you please do a set of wheels in addition to all the other stuff that you're doing? And some people really like it because, as you say, it's a total kind of disconnect. And some people just find it really irritating as like another thing that they've got to do.
I always kind of like having almost too much stuff on my
Do
plate.
you?
So like I like having like the little like menial tasks, that like, designing a texture for your grill, designing a wheel for your car. But at Stellantis, I mean at Jeep, you kind of follow the whole thing. So when I worked on the Renegade, you work on the texture, you work on, you don't do the lighting. We do have a lighting team, but you work with the lighting team. You work on the wheels, everything. It's sort of like once it's your car, you lead everything on it, which is kind of fun. You having that kind of control over the design, making it a cohesive thing that even the wheels kind of match your vision for the car, that even the texture matches the vision for your car.
This isn't something that Ralph said, but in the Abstract series, he said that he doesn't like directional wheels. Is that
No, he doesn't.
so? Does that mean that nobody's allowed to do directional wheels, or do you need to like fight with him every single time?
I mean, you can put a directional wheel up on the wall, but it won't get
Ah,
paved.
okay. So, okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's pretty
I
funny.
think we've broken him down a little bit on some. I think if you look at, I think the portal concept, I think, had directional
Okay.
wheels, but it's few and far
Yeah.
between. Few and
I mean,
far
now that you
between.
say it,
But everybody's got their
yes,
thing.
yes.
Every
Yeah.
design manager has their. There's another director that hates when you put like on top of Jeeps the lights on the top of the Jeep. It's like his pet
Uh,
peeve, like the
so
floodlights.
why is that? Because he's just it's like is that because he thinks that the designer's just putting it on there to hide like mediocrity or
I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe he thinks it looks cheesy. I don't know. I can't. It's just one of those things you don't do.
that's it's pretty funny. That's
Everybody's got their
everybody's got their
thing.
thing. And but it must be quite difficult to navigate all those things in a big corporation like FCA, Stellantis.
We're split up by
Okay.
brand, so each studio is a different brand, and you have your own director and managers and chief. So you just kind of got to learn the team that you're on.
Is there like a set process that everybody has to follow within those different brands, or do they feel like different companies? The second part to that observation was that I imagine working for a brand like Jeep is quite a lot different to working for a brand like Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, I mean, they're all still the same company, but the directors all run their houses different. Different vibe, different. They appreciate different parts of the process. I've had directors that really love, to see beautiful renderings, and others that like the hairball sketch. You know, I think they do all run a little bit differently, but still under the same. I mean, they're all still under Ralph, not Alpha anymore, but uh, all of PDO is still under
Is
Ralph.
Alpha not under him anymore?
No, that's on the other side of things. The Centris Stile got split down the middle, so Ralph has, I think, Maserati and Jeep in Europe.
Okay.
But I mean, Jeep was a lot of fun to work for, but when I started working at FCA again, it was FCA at the time. Um, like I was in the performance studio, which was Dodge, and we did some Alpha projects. Um, but I got used to drawing low slung, sexy cars with like little wheel clearance and spokes that make the wheel look big and sneaky everything. And then I got moved to Jeep, and it's like, no, we want the wheel to look smaller because you want to emphasize the rubber around the wheel. You want to emphasize the tire, or it's like, you know, it isn't a Dodge or an Alfa Romeo. It's a Jeep. It's totally like you have to switch the way your brain thinks because all of the rules, proportionally, form wise, everything is just different. You know,
How do you make those adjustments? Because it seems like,
it took me a long
yeah,
time. Yeah, and I mean, when I started in that studio, there were some really heavy hitters in there. There was Paul Hosty and Goodrich, who are both over at Rivian now. Um, Chris Piscatelli is a manager now at Jeep. I mean, just like these, I hadn't even worked for the company for a year when they moved me to Jeep. And so I'm in this studio, with not a ton of experience and not a great skill, especially compared to these guys. And they put me in the studio with like all the best designers. They were like, I literally, like, one side of me, I had Goodrich, the other side of me, I had Hosty. And these guys were just like so incredible at what they did. And Alan Macy was in there, and Chris Piscatelli, and I mean, Taylor all these guys were just so good. And then I'm not only trying to get up to their level because I'm like a student essentially still, but also, trying to switch gears from performance, sexy cars to Jeeps, and all the proportions and stuff that went with that. So and then at the same time, ironically, right when I had left this Dodge studio, one of my designs was picked for Clay over there. So then I was like in two places at once trying to balance two studios. And I mean, it was a challenge. I think I worked a lot of extra hours just I was like sweating beads, I was just like, they're going to fire me any day. They're going to fire me.
Do you sink into like can you describe that feeling that you get in those situations? Do you get like a horrible panic, like a crippling panic, or is there like a positive force that comes over you to go, I'm going to do this?
I wouldn't say it's a positive force. Maybe slightly self-destructive. But what I said earlier about like the challenge, like somebody says I can't, and nobody said I couldn't do it, but, somebody saying that if I can't do something, then I kind of have to do it. It's that kind of mindset. It's like, okay, well, I obviously am terrible at this. I'm going to prove that I can do it. So I get a little bit stubborn, and I would say the impatience is where the stress comes from, where the self-doubt comes from, when you're not progressing as much as you would like to, when you're not happy with your work and you don't have the patience for, to get on board with everything, to get your work up to the level that you want it to be at. But yeah, I mean, it was just, I can kind of spiral a little bit, maybe, when you're like, the self-doubt makes you sketch
right.
worse.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. It can have like it can have a really negative effect. I mean, you know what I've noticed, if I haven't had enough rest, like if I'm really overworked and I have a feeling like that, it can have a really negative effect on me, because you're kind of, I just think your perspective is kind of slightly off a little bit, and then it tends to go in a not in a positive direction, at least for me.
Right.
But then other times I will have that feeling of like, fuck, I'm gonna do it. I'm just going to. Yeah, it's like you said, if somebody says that you can't do it, you overcome that. But I would be lying if I said that I had that response every single time, and I think part of that is, I don't know, for me personally, is getting enough rest, but it's difficult if you've got small kids.
I think I feel both. And like at the same time, I feel like
in the same minute, you like,
I spiral a bit, but then I'm like, but you can do this. And I'm like, this is still shit. This looks like shit. And then you're like, all right, well, that means you've got to work harder, And then, I guess the let up is when, you have something picked or the boss is happy with everything. You're like, oh, thank goodness. Now I need to get better again. You're like, now I need to keep it up, so that they don't know. What do they call it? Imposter syndrome? Yeah. Where you're like, I got it. Now I have to keep up the ruse so they don't know that bullshit, I'm really deep down terrible.
But do you feel that, you said earlier on that you like to have like lots of things going on. Is that kind of like, is there a part of you that places less importance on an individual project if it doesn't go well? Not that you place less importance on an individual project, that you place less emotional investment on an individual project if you've got multiple things going on. And what I mean by that is that, like, if somebody turns around to you and goes, Laura, this sketch or this project that you've done is bullshit, that you don't have a fucking mental breakdown. That's what I mean.
Um, yes and no. Like it doesn't really, um, it doesn't really bother me on one hand, in that like I genuinely kind of, there's different types of designers. There's the ones that, really want to kind of get their name out there and get accolades. I just really love the art of it. I love doing it. I love working with engineers. I love clay. I love modeling. I love drawing. So like, I like just doing it, and I like being busy because I just get bored when there's not enough to do. Of course, I want everybody to love everything, and I would love to have fantastic feedback. But and then also, if you get too much good feedback, I start to doubt it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're just being nice, So then that makes me self-doubt. I mean, what wonderfully complicated psychological creatures we are, creatives, But I like having a lot to do because I like being busy, and I get bored when I'm not a person that I don't know how to like just like do nothing. Like I have like when I'm not working, I work on my project car, or I have other projects I work on, or whatever. I can't just do nothing. I'm not a do nothing person. So I like having a lot to do. And I like kind of the balancing act. But when it comes to like stuff getting picked or approved, or not having that emotional attachment, I guess it depends on what happens. Like most of the time, if it's like, well, that other guy's was really cool, I'm glad they picked that one. It's awesome when it's that, when you're looking at something and you're like, dude, that's pretty sick, I can see why they picked yours. Then as long as I was able to put forth my best effort, it doesn't bother me, because then I'm like, well, I gave it my best shot.
You couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, like and I'm definitely the kind of person that's like a give it my all kind of person. So at the end of the day, it's like, well, I did the best I could, and that genuinely was my best, and I know it was my best. But there are circumstances, of course, where for whatever reason you can't put forth your best effort, whether it's timing or, whatever it is, somebody's pushing you in a direction that maybe you don't agree with. That's rougher. That's when I get frustrated,
Yeah.
When you're sort of pressured into a direction and you're like, but, okay. And then you don't get picked and you're like, well,
Are you
okay.
ever rebellious in this situation? Because, like, I get the impression that you don't take a lot of shit. I mean, do you ever just go, like, fuck you?
How do I always give off that vibe?
Well, the thing is, you've kind of, I don't know. I mean, you've also achieved a lot, and you haven't done so by, I guess, taking no for an answer, so I wonder, like, does that transpire into your day to day as well, or do you kind of feel like, fuck, X and Y is the boss, so I'm not going to push it too much?
I sort of abide by the concept of submit to proposals. You've got the one, like, if your boss tells you, do this, you're like, okay, yes, sir.
Yes,
I will do that. And you put forth your full effort and you do that. And then you also say, hey, so here's the one you asked for. And then here's the salary dazzling one over here.
Yeah.
And you just cross your fingers that they pick the one that you believe in.
That's great. I mean, honestly, that is really good advice. A friend of mine said the same thing. He worded it a bit differently, but it was ultimately the same thing. And there's a lot of value in that, because you do get to, scratch that itch that you might have to do something else that you really believe in. But at the same time, you've delivered what they've said. And so you can't really get into shit for it. And yeah.
And also a lot of the time, like kind of what I tell my students is sometimes you just can't see what the other person is telling you. So sometimes like it's more so with students that are still learning so much, but you want to make sure that you're still open to feedback and open to you know evolving your design because I think there's an issue when creatives are given too much
Yeah,
freedom.
yeah.
Like, I don't know if you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino. I love
I
his
like Pulp
movies. I
Fiction.
hated Hateful Eight.
You know what? I don't even think I've seen that. And I listened to his podcast recently well, he was on Joe Rogan and he was talking about the Hateful Eight. And I was like, fuck, I need to really get around to seeing that.
I
Okay.
hated that movie. I loved all of his others. I loved, Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill.
Yeah, those are my two
But,
favorites. Oh, sorry. Let's not forget Reservoir
but,
Dogs.
oh yes,
Yeah.
Reservoir Dogs is amazing. And, and, oh man, I know it's not his movie, but Tangent, Lock, Stock,
Oh,
and
it's
Two Smoking
fucking great.
Barrels is
Yeah,
also
Lock,
amazing.
Stock, but Snatch as well. Have you
Snatch, yes, Dags,
Dags? Do you
Dags,
like Dags?
Dags.
Oh, yes, Dags. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but with Quentin Tarantino, like I think, he was a great filmmaker when he was sort of against the odds. You have to be inventive with your techniques and sparse with your storytelling and make everything really amazing. And then with Hateful Eight, I think he made it so big. He had a big budget and they were like, do what you want. And then he just kind of went off
yeah,
the cliff. And I think that happens a lot with creatives. I think one of the reasons I love design versus art is I think working in the constraints is what is amazing about design. I love working with engineers. I love, like I talked about, my liking sketching is my favorite part of the process. My other favorite part is feasibility because I love kind of the negotiation, the problem solving, like the challenge of trying to make your design the same, but with all of these things that they say can't happen. I mean, essentially, engineering sometimes can be like the side that says, Laura, you can't do that. And I'm like, I will find a way,
yeah.
you know. Um, but if you have design without constraint, there's no fun in it. I don't know. You gotta listen to, sometimes the constraint is engineering, sometimes the constraint is the critique, the feedback, the direction that the company or the brand wants to
Yeah,
take.
yeah, yeah.
So how can you still make an amazing design that you believe in and follow the direction that they want to go?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like a limitation can be. It's. I mean, it's not the first observation to say that the limitation or restraint is it makes for better innovation, or coming up with a creative solution. I mean, I'm not that fucking eloquent with my words, so I sum it up in one beautiful sentence. It somehow eludes me, but that it is that those limitations that can bring out the best in you, and
Mm-hmm.
and I guess it also goes for big fancy movie directors as well as musicians as well. There needs to be a struggle, and that's why a lot
Mm-hmm.
of bands like best work is their early work, because they've really had to wrestle with something, and overcome something, and
And they probably obsess over like the lyrics and pace of the song even more because they're like, oh, this is our one chance to,
yeah,
make it
yeah,
big.
absolutely.
Versus later they're like, oh well, I'm a pro. This is
I
this is
don't give a
amazing.
shit.
So they
Yeah.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. You hear it all the time. I think particularly with bands as well. It's especially with bands. It's you could argue that in hip hop as well. Those early albums. It's yeah, it's difficult. It's that struggle that makes it so good. So there you go, Laura. I think we should probably wrap up because yeah,
Cool.
I need to get going, and I guess you might as well. possibly. Um, do you have any advice for the young women out there wanting to become car designers that feel that maybe they don't belong in the private men's club that is car design?
My like initial reaction is fuck them.
You
But
can say that. That's
the more
okay.
PC,
No,
the more PC version, just honestly, the industry needs diversity. Like it does. Like, and it isn't that women, like, it's not like being a woman makes you a different designer. It isn't like the things that make me a woman make me design differently. But design is best when it comes from a lot of different perspectives. You know, women inherently have a different perspective because we're advertised to differently, we're talked to differently, we're given different toys as kids, our interaction with the world is inherently different than that of a man. So we're going to have a different perspective, just like you need people from all over the world on a design team because they all have different points of view, different perspectives on design, and that's where you get like beautiful creativity. There's a story that I really like that from a Disney animator. You know, when Disney was getting shit for like all of their stories being like white princesses saved by a prince, and they're like, why are you guys coming up with these stories? And then eventually they kind of evolved. There was this, I think he was an animator from Disney that was like, listen, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, literally everybody in the room was a middle-income, middle-aged white man. Like, we all came from similar backgrounds, and that's the story we knew. And then when we brought in people, when we brought in people from Hawaii, they had these cool stories, and we made Moana. When we had people, from other backgrounds that said, oh, what if you come up with this? I have this lore from my childhood that was told to me. Then we can make that into a story. Diversity adds creativity. So it's not really even that, we need more women. We just need more of everybody. We need, a bland design team would be one where everybody went to the same school. Everybody grew up in the same area. Everybody has a similar experience, It's one of the fun things about like working with the Italians. They have like the way Americans view Alfa Romeo is totally different than the way Italians view Alfa Romeo. It's different. And it's cool. That's what's fun.
Cool. Laura, thank you very much. I really, really enjoyed that. I'm sorry that yours had to be the episode with shitty sound and without all the fancy decorations, but we did it. We soldiered on, and
I think you have beautiful art.
Yes,
Beautiful art
exactly.
behind
Yes,
you.
thank you. Thanks very much.